Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Aesthetic Impact Informational Services presentation this evening. Dr. Angela Thompson-Smith, a Cultural Series Part 2, Shamanism, the Respected Practitioner. Let me give just a little bit of an introduction for Dr. Smith. Welcome, Angela. I'm glad to have you here again, sharing your expertise and knowledge and giving of your time for us. And just for everyone's knowledge about you, because we have a lot of interest for people who can't be here with us this evening. We're listening to these webinars. We've had several, and we're getting good feedback. A lot of topics that are in the fringe sciences and areas of psychology, sociology, physics that many of us are interested in passing and would like to know more, or just don't know what journals to get or don't have time, but a lot of good questions coming from various places, and we're getting a lot of feedback from the ad magazine that we're putting out too. So I'm hoping that we'll get even more exposure and more questions. Several webinars coming up between now and the end of the year, and you've featured in several, so very happy to have you with us.
Well, I'm happy to be here.
Your primary qualifications were in nursing and social work. Work as a registered nurse and a social worker with disadvantaged youth. And you're originally from England, the UK, and we'll probably fill us in just a little bit about that with your background. And you have education at UNLV, and you have research management, you remote view, you have been at Princeton, and currently are working from Boulder City with your own business, and a very background just doesn't begin to express what all you've been able to share with us so far and will be in the future. So with that, I am going to turn this over to you, and we will go ahead and get you up and running as the presenter and get your camera up.
Okay. My camera.
So far, we're not sending.
There. Okay. And video. How's that?
There you are. Hello.
Hello. Here I am. Okay. Shall I take it from here?
Yes, ma'am. All yours.
Okay. I'm putting up the first slide for the introduction to shamanism. And people may ask, how is it that you're a remote viewer, but you're also a shaman? And I think there's a lot of similarity between the two, because one of the aspects of shamanism is the ability to see, to be a seer. It's one of the aspects of being a shaman, and I want to introduce that during this talk. My background that qualifies me to talk about shamanism is that I grew up in the Celtic southwest of England. My hometown was Bristol, which is right there in the heart of the Somerset, Gloucester, Wiltshire area. I have relatives that came from Bratton in Wiltshire, which is where the Whitestone horses are, and a lot of crop circles, a lot of metaphysical stuff that happens out there with Avebury and Silbury Hill. So some of my ancestry is there in Wiltshire. Another branch of my family came from Stanton Drew, which was just across into Somerset, with very few people know about the Stanton Drew standing stones, which were erected about the same time as Stonehenge. So my ancestry is also out in that area. Also in Bristol and across the River Avon, the Porter family was very involved in farming and involved with a lot of the ancient beliefs there. And recently, a year or so ago, I found that in the village where I grew up, which was Southampton, there's actually a sacred cave, a sacred spring, and I had actually written about it in one of my books. but then I actually got to see it and realized that my ancestors who were in the village must have known about it. And so there's another link with the metaphysical and shamanic traditions of that area. I grew up knowing all the plants, all the uses of the plants, the names of them, the medicinal uses, the abilities of the plants. And also when I was in my 20s, I learned the runes, runestones, Celtic, actually a Saxon set. And over the years, I've been introduced to many other different types of runes, and I gave a talk on that about a month ago, I think now. And I've been taking training with Hank Wesselman and Jill Kuykendall recently in shamanic traditions. And last November, I put in an application to an organization in up in Massachusetts and was granted a practitioner's qualification. So I am actually a Rev, but I don't use that in my after my name, because one of the aspects of shamanism is you keep in the background, it's the spiritual work you do rather than the person that's important. So I don't use it in my name unless there's something specific I'm doing, perhaps for a healing or seeing. So I'm going to go over to the slides, and I hope you enjoyed this presentation. It was fun putting it together, finding the illustrations. So what is shamanism? When people commonly think of shamans, they think of a Siberian shaman in traditional dress with drums and traditions and rituals, and or perhaps a Native American, Indian with all of their cultural traditions, or perhaps a Brazilian priestess, or yeah, there are a lot of stereotypes of what a shaman is or what a shaman isn't. But actually, shamanism covers a wide range of beliefs and cultures across the world. I recently, about 2 weekends ago, attended the 28th International Conference of the Society for the Study of Shamanism, Healing and Transformation over the Labor Day weekend. And shamans from all over the world were present. This was in San Rafael in California, 3 days of the most amazing talks. It was the first one I'd ever been to. And a blend of scientific talks and experiential workshops and talks, and introduced by music, chanting, drumming, singing, dance. So it was an amazing weekend. So shamanism is commonly accepted in many cultures of the world, and some of the topics of this introduction are: what is shamanism? How does one become a shaman? Shamanic traditions and culture, and the origins and roles of shamanism. So it'll give you an overview of what constitutes shamanism. This is not a definitive presentation. There are many, many books on the topic, and I'm giving you an overview. Stanley Krippner wrote Shamans of the 20th Century. He was one of my professors. And he said a shaman is a magico-religious practitioner who self-regulates their attention so as to access information not ordinarily available to members of the social group who sanction the practice and whose physiological, psychological, and spiritual conditions they attempt to ameliorate, including stress and illness among members of the community. So the shaman does not cure illness. The shaman does not alleviate illness, but by the rituals and practices that they carry out, there is a concomitant healing and sharing of health. Whoops, gone too far. The 4 Ds of shamanism. There are actually more than 4, but I put the 4 main ones here. Mainly, shamans are practitioners, spiritual practitioners, who can voluntarily alter their state of consciousness. The shaman practice is socially sanctioned by the practitioner's community, and this doesn't necessarily mean the community that they're immediately living in, but the community in which they function. So for me, I have a social family, a spiritual family where I live in my community, and it's socially sanctioned by that community. Perhaps not sanctioned by the scientists in the community or the charismatic church community or the skeptical community, but by the community in which I function. And the 4 Ds of shamanism are dreaming. Dreaming is very important in shamanism because there's a lot of information that can be perceived and relayed to a client. Dance is very important. You've seen very much in the Native American tradition, the Indian tradition, that dance is very important. Drumming. Drumming is a practice by itself. When you drum, the brain actually follows the beat. It's something called entrainment, sonic driving, and this can drive the brain or lead the brain into a very altered state where you can perceive, you can become visual, and the body slows down and calms. And when you stop dreaming, start drumming, there's a great feeling of peace and a lot of visualization that takes place. And then divination of many different kinds can take place during shamanic practice. The requirements of shamanism are reveries or trance states that transmit the thoughts of another person, which is that you can go into a reverie or trance and link up with another person, perhaps through a form of telepathy. Assess what the person needs, what the person is feeling, thinking, a little bit like stage 4 in remote viewing. Dreams, where the practitioner feels that they're in a faraway place, rituals which may predict future happenings, and mental procedures to produce effects on distant physical objects or living organisms that will facilitate healing. Shamans' work should be outside the constraints of time, space, and force, a little bit like remote viewing. They operate outside of our current knowledge of physics, and shamanism works for the benefit of the community, and it does so in various altered states of consciousness. Another definition, an older definition from Mircea Eliade: a shaman is a man or woman who journeys in an altered state of consciousness, usually induced by rhythmic drumming or other type of percussion sound, or in some cases by psychoactive drugs. I don't include psychoactive drugs in my own practice because I can easily get into altered states by myself. But for example, in South America, they have the ayahuasca vine that's used in ritual sessions, and then there are the peyote ceremonies, native Indian. So there are quite a few cultures that use psychoactive drugs, but I don't particularly use it. I don't use it in my own practice. Uses of shamanism. What uses shamanism? Journeys, shamanic journeys are generally undertaken to help other people, such as members of the community, in diagnosing and treating illness in a very non-medical way, and I have to emphasize that. The shamanic practitioner is not a medical professional, so diagnosing and treating illness is done through the spirit world. It's not done, I don't have somebody come and I say, oh dear, yes, you've got this illness or that illness, and this is what you should do. What I do is I hand over to the spirit world or the ancestral world and say, here is somebody that's come with an illness. Do your work. So it's the spirits and the ancestors that actually do the work. It's not me that does the diagnosing or treating the illness. There's divination and prophecy. The shaman can use runes, or they can throw the bones in Africa, or they can light fires and look at the shapes of the smoke in Australia. So there are many, many ways of divination and prophecy that can be used successfully in shamanic practice. Acquisition of power is a debatable point, because there's the shaman is basically powerless in many ways, but their power comes from something outside of themselves. But it's acquiring that power during the ceremony, during the ritual, to be able to affect some change. You establish contact with guides, and everybody has their own guides, whether they're guardian angels, ancestors, spiritual guides. Everybody has them. Is establishing contact with them and asking them for assistance and help when needed. Or teachers in a non-ordinary reality. There are many teachers that are available to shamans. And also contact with spirits of the dead, which is also another debatable point. But in shamanism, whether it's metaphorical or whether it's actual, there are ways that you can access people who've passed on and ask them to come and give you guidance and to give you assistance. There are quite a few references on shamanism. Ruth Inge Hines, Stanley Krippner, Dorr, and Dorr said the shaman usually remains conscious and in control of his or her own faculties during ritual. They typically suffer no amnesia upon return to ordinary reality. Like some trance states, perhaps in mediumship, the shaman retains full consciousness and in total control of their own faculties when they're doing shamanic work. Who are the shamans? Another definition. Winckelmann, 1984, said that shamans are magico-religious practitioners who occupy a socially recognized role, who've developed the ability to interact with non-ordinary dimensions of existence, and they have specialized knowledge of spiritual entities. And he also said that they have special powers to influence the course of nature and human affairs in ways not ordinarily possible, and who occupy a culturally recognized role involving the supernatural, having special access to spiritual entities. And I want to point out, too, there are also animal spirits that are available to shamans. What do shamans do? They have special powers that allow them to influence the course of human affairs, which we've just said. And they're able to affect the world. We talk a lot about affirmations and the secret and being able to do intention. But shamans have been doing this for centuries. We now have new labels for, modern labels for some of these abilities. But this is what shamans have been doing. They've been doing intention. They've been doing affirmations. And they've known the secret for a lot longer than modern practitioners. There are several types of shamans. People who think of shamans think perhaps one shaman is, one shaman fits all. But Winckelmann showed there are 4 basic types of shamanic practitioner. There was a complex type consisting of all types of shamans. So there are some shamans that are one size fits all. There are shaman healers. There are priests, priestesses, and sorcerers, and then diviners, seers, and mediums. When I started my formal shamanic training, I thought I had to be all of those. And it was quite a daunting thought, thinking, gosh, I've got to be a healer, I've got to be a priestess, I've got to be a diviner, a seer, a medium. And in going through the training, I realized I don't have to be all of those. I can be just a seer and still be a shaman, although I do some of the other work as well. But being a seer is my principal ability. The shaman is a practitioner of mystery beyond the understanding of most members of his or her community. So the shaman is somebody who is in their community but set aside in their work. By culture, shamanic is very cultural specific. You've got the Siberian, Central Asian, and Finno-Uralic, Finland and the Urals shamans, Celtic shamans of Northern Europe, the Native Americans in North America, shamans of South America, and then you have the shamans of the South and East Asia. So it's a worldwide tradition and very cultural specific. Are shamans born or chosen? A person may be born with a propensity towards many of the abilities that are shown by shamans, and they may then train in shamanic practice. However, unless they're accepted by their community and use their abilities for the benefit of their community, they cannot be fully accepted as shamans. Shamans, the worldview of shamans is they're considered wise men and women of their community who demonstrate a wider view of reality and possess the ability to intercede for and aid members of their community. And that's part of my role in my community. They may be chosen at birth, either through a hereditary link to a shamanic relative or through a process of initiation and training. They may be special from childhood and recognized by the elders of their community. Ruth Inga Hines has since passed away. She was the founder of the Shamanic International Conference, and I also had her as a professor at Saybrook. I did a psychology of shamanism course with her back in the 90s, mid-90s, and she described the process of becoming a shaman, and she has since passed over. So consisting of 3 divisions: the call, initiation, and training. She said the initiation is preceded by a selection process that may consist of being called to serve, the role may be inherited, or the individual may decide for themselves to become a shaman and look for a teacher to train and initiate them. The call can come through revelation and mystical experiences, seeing visions or having epileptic seizures, displaying erratic behavior, surviving a deadly disease, being struck by lightning, having an unusual birthing, having unusual birth defects, being born a twin. Now, some of these prerequisites for becoming a shaman are viewed by the medical profession as perhaps abnormal, falling within the realm of abnormal psychology, of psychosis, of disease and injury. But actually, what happens is these behaviors or happenings lead to the strengthening of a person's psyche that they then decide to become a shaman. Characteristics of shamans. It's agreed that shamans are unusually gifted or perceptive members of their community. Shamanism may be bestowed on someone who's had a near-death experience, an out-of-body experience, or has inherited the gift. Usually an inner voice from the spirit world is heard, followed by a change in behavior. So a person perhaps can change their life in a positive way and decide that they want to follow a shamanic path. Initiation is, again, a very discussed area, very controversial area. What does a person go through to be initiated? In Native American tradition, it's very well known that the young person goes through perhaps a vision quest, or they go through a period of deprivation of not eating or drinking for a period of time. They have visions, they do drumming, they do ceremonies with their elders. And Nicholson said that the initiate goes through various degrees of physical and psychological ordeals, such as forced rhythmic dancing, sensory deprivation or seclusion, fasting and dehydration, beatings and other physical ordeals, which maybe in some cultures, I haven't heard of it, in the modern cultures, sleep deprivation, hyperventilation or fast breathing, which also Stanislav Grof was also promoting for bringing about behavioral change, ingestion of hallucinogens in some cultures, but these are only practiced within a shamanic or religious context, and they all involve cultivation and control of imagery. Visual imagery is a very important part of shamanism. Ruth Inge Hines cited 4 major criteria for shamanic initiation and training. She said that a shaman is expected to experience dismemberment and rebirth during training. And I actually, during one of my trainings with Hank Wesselman, experienced that. And it was quite powerful and a little disturbing, but I felt that I was the better for it and having gone through that. And it was a very visual experience. It was all done in a visual category. Hines said that shamans are expected to go on an ecstatic journey during shamanic initiation and training and to act as a guide for wandering souls. They're expected to master the fear of fire and expected to have animal guardians and to assume animal form. And again, this is all very metaphorical and visionary. It's, television shows programs where people morph into werewolves and into other animals. But in the shamanic tradition, even though the shaman may dress up in a costume that's very animal-like, a lot of the work is done on another level. It's done on a spiritual and a visionary level to carry out the work. The ancient shaman emerged from the hunting phase of human civilization. This is a quote by Rutherford. Celtic cave paintings from around 30,000 years BC show shamans dressed in the skin and antlers of the animal being hunted. Shamans acted as the diviners of rich hunting fields. They were intercessors between the hunters and the hunted, and allowed conciliation between the animal spirit and the hunters and the hunted. Shamans act as a bridge between worlds. Rutherford said that the shaman's call, initiation, and training is intended to produce a bridge between worlds, between death and rebirth, enlightenment, awakening, and rebirth again. Teachings are typically conveyed from a trained shaman by word of mouth to an initiate. Who becomes a shaman? Hines described a study of demographics. She carried out a study of shamans around the world, and she found that the shamans in her study were aged between 17 and 70 years of age. 70% accepted their vocation when they were over 30 years, so only 30% of them were shamans from a very young age. The gender of the shaman was not important to the client, and clients attracted to the shaman were attracted to the shaman with the most powerful spiritual connection. Shamans enter an altered state of consciousness or trance state in order to fulfill their intercessionary roles with the spirit for spiritual intercession, divination, and for healing. I'm wondering if I went past a slide. No, I think there's more on there later. Ritual in shaman. The ritual is very important in shamanism, and many shamanic teachers employ rituals to generate an altered state of consciousness and to train shamans. And some involve artistic traditions, such as the tattoo symbols, sand painting, and cave art. The shamanic cultures know the potential of rhythm and took advantage of resonant cavities, such as caves and kivas, that could amplify the effects of these rhythms. Ancient musical cultures developed instruments that aided trance, such as drums and rattles. And modern research confirms the finding that certain rhythms facilitate the trance state. Shamans are able to utilize altered states of consciousness to mentally travel to other dimensions and locations, known as spirit flight or spirit travel. It's also known as astral travel. The shamanic term magical flight appears to be similar to the out-of-body experience, or OBE. And Dr. Felicitas Goodman studied trance postures and found that they facilitated certain types of healing and divination states. For example, she took a group of students, and one of the trance postures she found was something called the bear posture, which was standing up with the arms in a certain pose. And she didn't tell the students what they were to expect, but after they'd been in these poses for a while, and she went around drumming and rattling to enable them to get to an altered state, when they came out of the state and described what they were feeling and what they were visioning, it was found that they were actually all of their references were referring to healing, to going out and healing people or allowing people to be healed or even being healed themselves. So her books are very interesting. Her university studies are very interesting in that she took dozens of different trance postures, for example, kneeling on the ground or sitting cross-legged or standing in the bear posture. And they did facilitate certain types of states and a concordance, a similarity of perceptions across all of the students. One of the shaman's roles is that of healer. Physical, mental, emotional, spiritual ill health may be taught by the shaman through the intercession of animal spirits, human spirits, ancestors, but currently Western medicine has no place for shamanic healing. The training of a shaman. Traditionally, a shaman was apprenticed to an older shaman who taught knowledge to the young student until the pupil was old enough or ready to participate in an initiatory ceremony in which the student overcame a danger, either physical, mental, or both. There are dangers involved in entering the spirit world, and it's usually best to go to a teacher. For example, as I said, I'm being trained by with a group of other folks by Hank Wesselman, and who is an anthropologist. The training is usually done, entering the spirit world is usually first done in training and then during an initiatory ceremony. The student becomes aware of both malevolent and beneficial entities, both human and animal, some of which he employs as allies. And shamans are not usually self-taught, and I want to emphasize that. If you decide this is a path you want to follow, don't go to books. Find out, seek out somebody in your community that does shamanic work and train with them. I want to touch on hallucinogens and shamanism. Shamanism has traditionally used certain plants and plant extracts to facilitate spirit travel in its rituals. And shamans have also stressed that the ability to develop spirit travel can be obtained through mastery of their spiritual and physical selves. Spirit travel is usually accompanied by experienced shamans. So it's very cultural specific. In South America and Africa, Native American traditions, they do use some plant extracts to achieve altered state. But there are other ways to achieve that without hallucinogens. Divination, shamanism also includes the ability to enter an altered state of consciousness or trance state in order to access information for individuals or for the community. And this might be achieved through the use of certain rituals, ritual objects, dance, or dreams. The modern definition here, the shaman perceives the world of total aliveness in all parts. Shamans are very involved with the natural world, in all parts sentient, in all parts capable of being known and being used. This pan-animism yields to the practicing shamanic powers and principalities. And these in turn can be used for healing, for renewal, and for bringing into the profane world the transformational power of sacred time and space. So shamanic time and space is very sacred. So let's jump ahead a little bit to modern shamanism. So apart from traditional shamans, who can call themselves by that title? Ruth Inge Hine states that only the following can think of themselves in that way. People who can alter their state of consciousness at will. They can fulfill the spiritual needs of their community. They're mediators between the sacred and the profane, and they use symbols and rituals, can begin to call themselves shamans. Today, modern science views shamanic skills as evidence of mental illness. However, shamanism is culture-specific. Ruth Inge Hine's survey found that shamans are usually consider themselves chosen and are able to move easily from one reality to another. Shamans operate on an altruistic motivation, and none of the shamans in the study showed any signs of mental illness. Techno-shamans, we're bringing right up to modern times here. Can we be modern shamans? Do you have healing abilities? Do you have divination abilities? Can you voluntarily alter your state of consciousness to access information? If you're a remote viewer, you can. Can you affect your external environment? Are your specific abilities sought by and sanctioned by members of your community? You may be a modern shaman. That is the last slide. So I'm able to answer some questions if there are any.
I will go ahead and unmute folks. We do have background noise since mics are now activated. So anyone have any questions? I do eventually, but please everybody just go ahead and we'll take turns as we go. Actually, was somebody going to say something?
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh my gosh, good. This is Providencia, Provi.
Hi, Provi.
Hi, thank you very much for your presentation. It was really good. I thought the 16th was tomorrow, so I was glad that I happened to get on my computer tonight. I studied 4 years Peruvian shamanism, and because of my physical limitations, I used my ability to easily alter my state of consciousness to do most of the training. But it was a very profound spiritual awakening for me without connection to any structured religion.
Yeah.
And because of that, I've chosen not to belong to any structured religions.
Yeah, same here.
And I don't refer to myself as a shaman. I feel that when I die, I could be referred to as one, but not as I'm alive, because it's not an arrival. You know, it's just a process of always unfoldment.
Right. I think that too. It's a lifelong learning, a lifelong training.
Yeah. And I also it's most of us who have these can be used with that word shaman, but I see shaman as very specific with a purpose, and I really appreciate the other definitions as before the techno shamans or the modern shamans.
Yeah, but I like to think of myself as a shamanic practitioner.
Yes, I like that very much. But I want to thank you for your presentation.
Oh, you're welcome.
I'm trying to mute my mic, so if Teresa, if you can mute it so I can cough comfortably, that'd be great.
Aw, sure, Provi.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comment and for sharing that about you.
You're welcome.
Does anyone else have any questions or comments? We have texting. Greatly enjoyed the presentation and thank you.
Well, thank you, Alan.
Angela, while you were speaking, I went over to my website and retrieved a piece that I had written, and I hadn't thought about it until this very moment when you were talking. After reading Don Juan, a Yaqui shaman's physical and mental way to higher states of consciousness, I was struck, and I copied this into a document really quick so I could maybe touch on some points with you. The quote by Arthur Clarke, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. But the thing is, if you don't understand it, it's magic from which side, It's very advanced knowledge to one, and the other, it's primitive. But, people in the Western culture, we're so used to, the quick turnaround times and the drive-through this and the drive-through that. And especially in the world of medicine, which I don't want to get into medicine per se, but, there are a lot of places in the world that don't have scanners. They don't have anything except their intuition and their environment and their gut instinct, and they've been functioning for centuries. They stumble and fall, just like we do with our machinery. But, in the new commentary, I didn't have the original book. I got into the reprinted version. But now that I'm studying biofields and magnetocardiograms measure like the aura and the electromagnetic field around the body, as soon as I read this, I thought, this is where we are with so many sciences. It depends on what science you're in as to what keywords you use, what language you develop because you don't have one, so what you term something, and so sharing information is very, very difficult. So just for the sake of the physicality of it, and I already scrolled past that. Oh, actually, it didn't all copy. Oh, darn it. Well, I can just read it and get back, I'll put your slide back up. But essentially, it says, as explained by the Don de Castaneda, the shamans were able to see and perceive energy that flowed through the universe, and they labeled it energetic facts. These are Yaqui. The ability to perceive energy in this way allowed them to observe human beings as energy fields with the appearance of luminous balls. I thought, okay, then magnetocardiogram, that's an overlay. Each of the luminous balls was connected to a mass of energy of inconceivable proportions, which they labeled the dark sea of awareness. And the point of attachment was even more brilliant than the ball itself. This point of attachment was called the assembly point, and this is where perception converts energy to sensorial data, which, you start bringing in remote viewing and what we learn about perceiving with our senses. And I thought, okay, so there's another overlay and similarity. And they said they then converted it into cognition, which was a working version of a mental image. And they recognize the image, it's like when you see something and it's like, oh, that's a tree. And from now on, you always know what a tree is. And then you learn an oak versus a pine versus a pecan, etc. And an apple. But anyway, they said, according to Castaneda, the Yaquis, and this is debatable, were the first to see individual vibratory energy in this way. And then they went on to say this dark sea of awareness gave them the ability to see that the universe was filled with infinite, huge clusters of luminous filaments. They saw the universe of intent, and for them, intent meant intelligence. And so, anyway, I'm skimming a little bit. It said they translated the world as they knew it, located the same place on the energetic luminous spheres at the height of the shoulder blades, an arm's length behind them against the boundary of the luminous ball. And that was the assembly point where everything came in, right there at that one spot between the shoulder blades.
Wow.
And, so anyway, I don't know if you have anything to, add to that or but I wanted to throw it in for discussion and see what you had to say, especially now since, again, science is getting us to the point where we can study the energy fields, and we're beginning to able to actually see them. So anyway, I'll shush now.
And that's probably why Don Juan would come up behind people and hit them between the shoulder blades to to get that energy moving, or to wake them up.
I see it. He did that. I don't remember that from the book.
In one of the books, yeah.
I see.
Yeah, but I do feel that there's a merging of metaphysics, of traditional ways of seeing the world, medicine, mathematics, physics. All of these disciplines seem to be overlapping more and more as time goes on. This idea now of entanglement overlaps with so many fields, and I think the more we're learning in the new physics and math and metaphysical areas with shamanism, that there are going to be more and more, perhaps to the point where everything fits together. I don't quite know how that's going to be, but I think that might be a possibility in the future.
Provi has made a comment which we can read, and Sam had his hand in the air. Sam, did you have something you wanted to say?
Can you hear me?
Yes,
yeah.
You can.
I'm sorry. This is Ed. I couldn't figure out all the icons on here. So,
Hi,
Angela,
Ed.
Hey. I thought the presentation was really good, and it came along at a time when, it's one of those circumstantial things. You're getting pulled into something, and sure enough, Angela popped up at the right time for me. So I really appreciate it. There's a lot to digest here. Is there a primer or book that I should read to kind of get started and understand all the concepts?
There are some books. I don't have the titles in front of me, but there are several books by Sandra Ingerman and Hank Wesselman, and there are several people on the internet. There's another one, the name isn't coming to me, but definitely Sandra Ingerman's work. She has several books out that cover shamanism in a very practical way, a very easy understandable way. And Hank Wesselman and his wife Jill Kuykendall also have several books on the internet that you can access, and they give overviews and exercises and further instructions. And I think Sandra Ingerman, I know Hank Wesselman offers courses around the country, and I think Sandra Ingerman does too. So that might be a first step.
Okay, I went to the American Society of Dowsers convention, and just met up with one of the shamans there that just immediate rapport, and we're talking about maybe studying. He's thinking about letting me study with him, so I'm just trying to learn a little bit more about it before I step into it.
Yeah, yeah.
Certainly a lot of things about the ancient history of shamanism that I don't relate to, and particularly could never use a psycho drug, and wouldn't do that. But being a remote viewer, I think I understand somewhat of what we're getting into. Yeah,
I think there are some people in this world who are not visual. They don't know how to step outside their body, and for them to be involved in a cultural tradition that uses psychoactive drugs perhaps can give them that experience where they can recognize how to do it on their own. I've always been able to go out of body and alter state, but there are people that is a very difficult thing to do and a very threatening thing for them. And perhaps doing doing that in a very controlled way with psychoactive drugs within psychoactive drugs within the cultural tradition might be helpful to them, but I don't use them myself.
Okay. Yeah, I have to agree with you. I have had the experiences enough that I can get out on my own. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, I wish you well with your studies.
Well, thanks. Let's see where it goes. It's just, it's one of those things.
Uh-huh.
Okay, what's coming across my path now? Why me?
It's time to grow a little bit, I guess.
Yeah.
Provi texted in a comment that says that she has many clients who come to get assessed to utilize the information to help them with health issues, and there are MDs, NDs, and chiropractors who send their clients to me for an assessment as well, especially if they cannot find something in the physical realm, yet knowing there is something that cannot be seen or sensed by machinery or blood work. And Marianne is saying there is easy-to-use shamanism, Jan Morgan Wood, very easy to read, so she's referencing that.
Okay, good.
But it really, intuitive medicine comes, and I can't say, I almost say comes close, but there are practitioners who don't advertise it, but they have intuitives in their offices, in their practice, who help. And, like Provi just mentioned, sometimes there's things that you just can't pick them up, and you need whatever tools are available to you. So.
Mm-hmm. For example, at this conference I attended, there was a dental surgeon and his wife who manages his practice. And while he's going through the surgical work, she's back in the office doing shamanic work with the patient remotely. So, they act as a team. And I thought that was neat, for them both to be practicing in their own tradition, in their own specialties.
And, Reiki practitioners probably would not necessarily, I don't know if they would dislike or not being put into the same category, but there are surgeons who have Reiki practitioners sitting in the operating room and or sports fields, and they get their hands on players with ankle injuries and stuff right away. And so those folks are stepping out of the box and into integrative medicine and cultures that, again, you can't measure in a test tube, but they know that it's been shown to have benefit.
Yeah. And in fact, in Britain, I think it's reverting back a little bit away from this now, but a few years ago, complementary medicine was very strong, and a general practitioner could actually refer a patient to a complementary practitioner, either not a chiropractor, but an acupuncturist or a Reiki healer, and it was covered by the National Health Service. And as long as the GP wrote a prescription for them to go to an alternative healer, it was sanctioned and paid for by the health system. And I think there's a little bit of aversion on that now, but it was a step in the right direction.
Mm-hmm. And, you have to, I ask myself, what would happen if we lost some of our technology, if we had a brownout or a blackout or whatever. And, I know somebody who is a remote viewer and came up with the most ingenious thing. She used an anatomy chart and was dowsing. And I thought, how smart is that?
Yeah, I've seen that done too. Yeah. There was there was another woman practitioner in the remote viewing field who initiated that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I've seen that done. There's also a chiropractor I know that does that too.
The problem is there are too many journals and too many specialties, and it's just hard to keep up. I wish there was a place where we could go to read about people who are actually applying these things.
Mhm. Yeah, I know there's a journal of consciousness studies that will publish some of these topics, and also I think it's the Journal of Perceptual Medicine, or there's one of the journals that will accept topics such as shamanic work or healing work. And of course there's the Journal of Scientific Exploration. They definitely have these types of topics in them. And these are scientists who are stepping outside the box to study many different topics. And they have a conference each year too. It's the Society for Scientific Exploration. Mm-hmm. So there are places to go and find this work, but you have to search for them.
Hey, I can tell you one. John Cordum just wrote the Cordum technique.
Mm-hmm.
Heard of that?
No.
He developed an ability to look at people and to diagnose illnesses. And he just went through a very rigorous training with a doctor in Bethesda, Maryland, where they did hundreds of case studies where John would do his intuitive thing and working with the doctor, and he was teaching the doctors how to use more intuitive methods to understand what their patients were going through or needed, or what diagnoses were. He was actually my trainer at Monroe too, so
okay.
he's a really incredible guy. But it's called the Cordum technique, K-O-R-T-U-M.
I'll look it up. Yeah.
Yeah, Teresa, you might really enjoy that book.
Yeah. Also, the University of California in San Francisco and some of the other branches have, particularly University of California at San Francisco, have not a shamanic culture, but Chinese, a Center for Chinese Medicine, and they integrate a lot of practical, non-traditional methods into treatment of patients.
Rovi, did you want to say something?
Yeah, it has to do along with being respectfully acknowledged by professional medicine, and yet we're not there, through the political part of it. I don't know how to explain it more than that. And I'm just a reflexologist. That's the umbrella that I work under. Mm-hmm. So I have no registered nurse licensing or any other education other than high school and the training that I've gone for the massage schools to study the body. Yet, when there is an assessment that occurs during a session with my client, and I get the response, "But you're not a doctor. What do you know?" And I just shrug it off because I have to trust what comes in. There's no hidden agenda in me. Mm-hmm. And then to have the person either call me or come by to apologize and to say, the accuracy was there. There's no way that everybody who is gifted with the healing abilities or the tendencies towards the shamanic approach with healing can have that overall recognition that insurances would give or doctors would give, and in a way that is okay. I don't charge for my assessment services because that's my way of tithing and giving to the community. So I'm good with that. I do charge for my reflexology sessions, you know, and that's how I make my living. But it's the educational part, you know, of getting that recognition, you know, the caliber that says, yeah, you know what you know, not through your ego, but through the information that's come through you, and we will take it and keep it as part of, what was it, if I can share this, a client came to me with all his blood work. Doctors could not find something, and when I touched the paper, it was as if this information just came boom, 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 and I started writing it down, writing tests down that I had to Google to make sure they existed, you know, because I didn't know. And I gave it to him on a sticky, and I said, give this to your doctor and ask him if he would consider considering these suggestions. So he had handed it to the doctor. The doctor absentmindedly took it and said, yeah, I'll look at them later, and put it in his folder. The other doctor took the folder, made the appointment with the patient, and then proceeded to order all these tests, which helped them find the problem. But the doctor thought that that was notes from the other doctor. So, you know, come to find out, it was my little sticky that generated all these tests.
Wow.
And the patient mentioned that to the doctor, where that came from. But they found the problem that they could address right away. You know? So at the age of 58, I don't know what I'll do to acquire a degree or educational background to get recognized, so that I don't get, and it comes across as a slap in the face many times. You know, what do you know? You're not a doctor. You have no education. You know? It is hard.
Yeah, you have to live in the real world, and what I've done is, as well as my remote viewing work, I have now taken some training, and I'm licensed as in the state of Nevada, and the town I live in, as a life coach. And under life coaching, there is a provision for transformational coaching. And under the transformational coaching, I can do my shamanic work. So there are provisions within society to do this work. You just have to find them. And so as long as I'm doing my life coaching work and keeping up to date with that, then that allows me a freedom, great sense of freedom to do a lot of this other work.
Thanks for mentioning that, because that seems more digestible for me with time-wise, you know, to acquire some kind of training as opposed to getting a training that's many, many years.
Because I also, I have other qualifications too. Like I did train as a nurse and social worker in England, but I'm not registered in the States to do that work. So I am not a medical practitioner in the States, even though I have the training and background. And I have my Ph.D. in psychology, but because I didn't go on to do the clinical work, then I can't be a clinical psychologist. But I can be a life coach and incorporate all of this training into what I do.
Thank you for saying that. Thank you.
You know, Charlie, what I wish, my overview is, you know, I've been doing medical work since 1975 as a registered nurse. And I've worked with some of the most gifted doctors, and I've learned so much. I'm not a physician, wouldn't ever claim to be one. I am hopefully a good tool for them. I try to observe and report back. That's part of what nurses do, and give them information for them to reevaluate and go from there. And where I'm going with this, I guess, is that none of us can be, you know, experts at absolutely everything. To specialize as a neurosurgeon you can't dual major, and there will be one pop up, sure, as a cardiac surgeon, you know, and to be excellent at all these things. And I think that it would be so great to have a physician intuitive team. And because a physician becomes very intuitive as they practice and as they grow through their years in their practice. But, you know, if they were really, really excellent at the medical end of things, and yes, they are intuitive, but what if they were coupled with somebody who was a really excellent, who spent all that time becoming an intuitive and didn't go to medical school? What a team, you know, in my opinion, but, you know, that's just me.
Have you found... Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, and if for Provi, I think it would be so cool if she could find, say, a college with somebody that Ed was talking about, you know, have a physician or a research lab or somebody, and you'd almost have to find an integrative medicine practitioner who would be willing to work with you, and you might be tithing because somebody has to break the ground.
Right, right.
But, you know, just find somebody who would be willing to work with you and team up, you know, and see what you could do, see what you could learn. And then maybe publish a paper here or there, whatever. But it's like remote viewing right now. It's a lot of what we do right now is for free because we're not in the yellow pages.
Yeah, because I wouldn't be able to get a license, a state business license or a city business license as a remote viewer. There's no category. There's nothing. I would be lumped in with storefront psychic, you know, who put the plaque outside on the sidewalk. And I don't want to go there. So that's why I've gone the professional route to do life coaching. But I was going to ask Teresa, haven't you found in your profession, in your work, a lot of nurses are very intuitive? I know doctors are too, to an extent, but nurses who have that day-to-day contact with the patient on a very physical level, very personal level, can often be very, very intuitive.
Yeah, and actually there is the gold standard of developing your abilities and your skills is Benner. And she's the gold standard for nurses. And you start out as a novice and you barely know how to do anything, but you start to function, and the more you function, you know, you start to pick up patterns, and pretty soon, by the time you get to the fifth or the expert stage, you're mixing the whole scenario. You see the situation holistically. You're not just driven by the machines and their numbers. You're putting it with the person, and you're matching up signs and symptoms with the presentation. And is again, like some of it is pattern recognition, but some of it is just experience, because until you've seen it, it makes no sense. So, you know, like I use the when a patient will come in and they'll say they have a throat pain or whatever, or pain in their neck, I mean, you're automatically weeding things out, and you're not diagnosing, you're not doing the doctor's work at all. You're just trying to get them in at the appropriate type of bed in a timely manner and what level they are as far as their illness presentation, but you're automatically ruling out, okay, sore throat, strep throat, peritonsillar abscess, which could be an airway issue, which is a real emergency, versus a hidden heart attack in a female versus, you know, a stiff neck versus, you know, there's just all this stuff. So, anyway. And all that comes with experience.
And I read somewhere, too, that when doctors are making diagnoses, there's an intuitive aspect that kicks in as well.
Yeah.
You know, they've got all, that's why I read somewhere about, you know, computerized diagnosis. That is effective to a point, but to have the physical doctor there as well, he brings his experience and also an intuitive sense to the patient and
Mm-hmm.
you know, get the feeling for what's wrong with the patient, as well as the signs and symptoms.
Right, because medicine is an art and a science.
Mhm. Yeah.
Does anybody else have anything to offer? Let's see. Proby's gonna meet with Dan. Tell him we said hello. You're gonna practice theory together as a team.
Ah.
Oh, she's already skipped out.
Oh, okay.
She's a very gifted person. Bilocates at the drop of a hat and didn't realize it until she started. We would get together and start going over our sessions on Wednesday nights.
Yeah.
And she started describing, and it's like, I think you're bilocating. You're a basic student. You don't even know what that is. So anyway.
Yeah.
But, does anyone else have any more comments? Well, if not, thank you for another very insightful presentation for those of us who really didn't have much exposure to this piece of culture.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of information packed into a little bit of a presentation slideshow, and I'm sure you could talk for hours.
Yeah, these are just the main points. There's a lot more. Yeah, a lot more. But you know, as I say, if people are interested, go to Sandra Engelman's work or go to Hank Wurzelman's work, and you'll get a lot of good information. And I want to thank you, Teresa, for having me back on your webinar.
So you're welcome. Again, there's an awful lot of downloading, I think, of the recordings going on. I keep trying to get numbers, but nobody can tell me that. So anyway, I just go by the emails and what I get, and people are thanking us. So thank you, because you could be charging big bucks for this.
Oh, I'm happy to do this. I'm very happy.
Yeah.
I enjoy it.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming, everyone. And the recording should be available on Aesthetic Impact within the next few days. It takes a little bit of time for my web people to get it uploaded. Please check both Aesthetic Impact and AIIF webex.com. And that way you can keep up on speakers are coming and going all the time and trying to, we need to reschedule you, by the way, for your November one.
Yeah.
But anyway, we have a variety of topics coming up. So please stay tuned to the calendar and don't wait for me to post, because I could burn up all the search engines or all the forums posting. So pretty soon you do that enough, then nobody's going to read anything that you post. So thanks for coming, everyone, and we'll see you next time. Thank you again, Angela.
Okay, thank you, Teresa, and thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you. Thanks for coming.